This here is a Sears KS Super camera body. I got it from a thrift store for 25 bucks. This is the lens that came with it originally, was anyway. It's not missing any of the pieces. Well, it's missing all the pieces, but they're all in a bag, that bag. And I dropped it and shortly thereafter realized it was locked. So tried loosening all the screws to see if I could get it to unlock. Didn't make a difference, took it apart, and the aperture diaphragm just came apart, and I gave up on it. It's all in a bag. That's a problem for future me. It'll get fixed eventually. I didn't like it as much as these ones that I have, though, because you can't zoom with it. You could do manual focus, which slightly affected the zoom, and manual aperture. Also auto aperture. That's it. It would not do any sort of zooming at all. None. Through the camera, through the lens. Mind you, it's a K-mount Pentax lens, so it doesn't really, or Pentax K-mount lens, it doesn't really matter, because there's no autofocus and no auto zoom anyway, or, well, electronic zoom. It's all, the only auto thing is the aperture adjustment. So either way, went on eBay, long story short, got this for $5 plus $5.40 plus $14.40 shipping, so $19.80 total. Well, what ended up happening was, ordered it on a Saturday night, Sunday morning. It got kind of blurry and tired around then. Realized Monday morning, hey, they haven't shipped it yet, and they were about to ship it. So I called the store up. Turned out it was really close to me when I saw the address, like 20 minutes away. And I ended up leaving with this, and for the shipping, they gave me this lens. It was in their, you know, 2 for $5 bin. And 2 rolls of expired film. One was APS, and one was the expired Superior 400 24 exposure, which we're going to mess with in this video. I think it's from the early 2000s or the 90s, based off the 24 exposure, because later ones were 36. But basically, JCPenney lens, right? Branded as anyway. It's just a whole little tangent about department stores we're going to go off of. That's an Emerson ceiling fan, but some of them, I don't know if that exact model, some of the Emerson fans were branded as Sears. A lot of things were sold by Sears back in the day. Washing machines, dryers, refrigerators under the Kenmore brand, furniture, home appliances under the Sears Roebuck brand, some of them, or Kenmore as well. Furniture, I don't know what they sold it as, but either way, this camera was sold under the Sears name, and it's pretty much just a rebadged Ryco XR6. The only difference is it's got some feature differences. The body's the same. The exposure range is different. So this one has a narrower range. It's not as wide, but it's still an awesome camera. And for 25 bucks, it was great. And the fact that I got for the 17 bucks this lens plus 2 rolls of expired film is awesome. Or for $14.40, awesome deal, right? So what I ended up doing was I ended up using these lenses. Finished shooting these rolls, or this roll. It's Cinestill 800T, and we're gonna look at what came out of that. One thing I'll say about this lens, it's awesome. I have what's considered to be good vision, like pretty good vision, right? Somehow I collect lights and stare into them all day, and yet my eyes are fine. There are things that I cannot read, right? And I can read a pretty far distance to the point where it surprises people. There are certain things that, like, if once it's far enough, I can't read it, right? Just like any other person. This thing can reach that, which kind of makes sense considering it's telescope. It's pretty much a binocular for your camera. It's awesome. The only thing, though, is when you're zoomed in, everything's amplified, including your movement. So when you go and you hit that shutter button, when you hit it on a lens like this where it's not zoomed in and it's a really short exposure shot, nothing. You won't see any blurriness. On this, you will, because it's amplified. So every little movement is, however many times you're zoomed in, is pretty much how it's amplified for the most part. So we're going to look at the shots that came out, and then we're going to try again. So essentially what ended up happening here is I had light leak. This was taken with a macro lens. I kind of got to work on my focus. This one was taken also with a macro lens, but not zoomed in. Same lens. These ones are coming out clear. You just see that light leak section, right? This one came out nice. I can't tell if that's light leak or if it's just the color of the sun refracting through the clouds. This one, again, taken with that same thing, maybe a little overexposed, but whatever. And this one was taken with the zoom lens, and you can see it's kind of blurry because I shook it. Alright, so we saw the images of light leak. Let's discuss what light leak is. So, the way film works is you have, just picture it like memory foam, for light, right? So you have this lens that refracts the light into a certain shape, just enough to fit perfectly on the output end of it, reflects it out, just enough to fit perfectly onto the film. The input end, you know, you adjust the focus, aperture, whatever, and exposure is controlled by the camera itself. So basically what happens is every time you click the shutter and a photo's taken, you see it opens for a split second. See my eye through it, and light gets let through. And in that split second, that light sort of leaves an imprint on the film. So whatever you're photographing goes through the lens, is refracted into the right shape, and then is projected out onto the film. Shutter opens during that, and it's a pretty short exposure because it absorbs it like instantly. Sometimes it'll stay open for longer, right? Like if it's a dark photo. So light, listen to the shutter, it's instantaneous. Dark, stays open for longer because the film won't be able to absorb it as well. So essentially what happens with light leak is somewhere on the camera, light infiltrates that and leaves an imprint on the film. It doesn't have to be a lot, because you see, to make a whole image like that, it's on. So to make a line like that, it does not take a lot of light to leak in and ruin it. Look at this Canon EOS Rebel. There's a channel in here, and then there's a wall that sticks out. When you close the door, that channel fills that gap in that wall, and it's enough to not let enough light through to cause a problem. I'm sure there's still like microscopic amounts if you can even measure light like that. Here, there's a viewing window for where the film canister sits against, just so you can tell what kind of film you're shooting when the door's closed, so you don't open it and expose it. So there's a foam around that to keep light out. Now, what was happening on this Sears thing is it works the same way, right? So you've got shutter, film on the other side, and of course this one takes a long exposure. There's no lens on it, so it's kind of freaking out. You should point it up towards light, and it's instantaneous, right? But it's the same idea. So this one does not have a gap with a channel, you know, a channel with a gap in it that the door perfectly fits when it closes. No. Also, don't put a lens in how I am. I'm just kind of smashing it together. It's not good for the. That's not good for the camera either. Wow, this poor thing. These things aren't exactly known for their reliability. I should probably be a little more careful because they're not toys. But essentially, the way that this one seals is similar, but the gap isn't big enough. Or the gap isn't deep enough for just the door itself to keep the light out. So what they did was they put foam in it, as you can see. There's foam there. There's remnants of foam there. Just kind of hard. Yeah, you can see it better there and there. So what I did was I looked at the photos, right? And the light leak was happening just left of center, right there. So what I ended up doing was I knew that the light leak was coming from somewhere here or here. I took out all the old foam, and mind you, there was almost none left. Like, it was kind of amazing how little there was. And I filled it with string, twine, or rope, or yarn, whatever you want to call it. Basically, peel it like this so it fits in the channel. You grab it from both ends up top, and then just kind of pull it apart like that, right? Off of one piece so it's thinner and it fits in better. And what this does is it fills that gap up, because cutting foam that exact is kind of hard to do if you're not a machine. So that's what light leak is. That's why it happens. And we're going to see on this roll if it actually worked. There is a chance now that because the foam is deteriorated here at the end of the door, now that I've lifted this door out, that foam being in not very good condition, which I probably should have replaced it before I shot the roll, that might leave a gap and cause light to happen all the way to the left, or it could ruin the entire roll of film for all I know. We'll see. But yeah, it's just a roll of expired film. Speaking of why expired film, well, if you notice, it's Superior 400. This is, at least for now, discontinued. I don't know why. This is the temporary replacement. This stuff is magnificent. I'll show some photos of it after, but it's not the same thing as Superior 400, and I want to keep shooting Superior 400, so if it has to be expired, it's fine. I just want to experiment with it just so I can get the same effect, or maybe something cooler. But yeah, that's that. Now, here's what the newer Fujifilm looks like, the non-Superior. Some people think it's reboxed Kodak. I don't know, it probably is, because their 200 is, the charts for it, if you look at the spec sheet, match the Kodak 200. I don't know if it's gold or Ultramax or what, but anyway, these shots came out really nice. I took these during the wildfire thing, which I guess is still sort of happening in Canada. Smoke drifted here, and I figured it would look cool in the streetlights while my lungs and eyes were burning up. And yeah, it makes for some really cool effects. For the fireworks section here, I think it did better than Superior would have done. You know, it all kind of just depends on what you're doing. I hope that if they bring the Superior back, if it's like just a supply issue, that they temporarily stopped selling it. I hope that they keep this one because it's good. It's got its own uses too that are good. So, yeah. I mean, if it's Kodak and they bring that one back and discontinue this, I could just get it from Kodak. But either way, these photos all came out really nice. Some of them are kind of weird exposure-wise, but that's just how that camera is. And that one's like out of frame. This one's framed nicely, but again, exposure is strange. I like it though. This one's nice. It's just a lot of trial and error and experimentation. You see there's no light leak on this one because it was dark out. I'm back a little sooner than I expected, so I guess let's take a look at these photos from the lab and see how they came out. It's interesting, and it's in some ways worse, in some ways better than I expected. So this one came out dark because I was an idiot and didn't set it up a few stops. This one came out blurry because I couldn't hold the camera straight. Same thing here. I just got to get a tripod for this thing, is all it is. Because when I do hold the camera straight, shots come out like this. And this one's actually pretty cool. A little bit of color shift going on. This one was on macro mode, and I shouldn't have been because of the type of photos being taken. This one came out fine. It's not blurry except the sides. That's an aperture thing. This one came out really nice. Bug. I like this one. That first and third photo in that last slideshow, I believe what happened is those were the ones where I did not set the exposure compensation correctly. So it was at 0 stops and it should have been at 2. And the photos became underexposed. Now, the one with the power lines also had kind of a funky effect to it. But I don't remember if I shot the photo like this or like this. So that might be light leak. That might have just been light leak and I shot that power line photo just normal. So there's a weird purple line at the top. And remember, it's not going to look the same as the other film because 1, it's a different kind of film, and 2, it's absorbing light different than normal because it's expired. So it could be light leak, or it could just be some sort of fragment from, you know, just an effect, a byproduct of being expired. Either way, the ones that did come out good, and the light leak was nowhere near as bad in pretty much the same sunny conditions. I've also figured out from my experimentation that I prefer this camera for night photography to my Canon, because this one doesn't fight for half an hour to figure out how to focus like this one does. You just set the focus and go with it. This one, if you try to set the focus and go with it, just doesn't get the exposure how I want it. And I'm sure I could set that myself with a light meter, because I have a light meter, I have multiple, color, temperature, whatever, but I just prefer to use this one because it chooses it really well for me. That second slideshow, you saw how the photos came out, they were awesome. This is my preferred camera now for night photography, and I fixed the light leak issue for the most part. If there's any left, it doesn't matter because I'm going to be using it at night. And the issue's not bad enough to where stray light affects it. It's really only like if it's out in the sun. I'm happy with it, and I'm happy with the expired Superior 400. I'm probably going to continue to use that until I can get a hold of the regular stuff. If I can get a hold of the regular stuff anymore. It seems to be rather uncommon around here nowadays. Maybe they'll bring it back, maybe they won't. I don't know. There's a lot of speculation. Everyone thinks they're right if you ask them, and think that everyone else is wrong. It just is what it is and how it is. And it's also cheaper than regular Superior, and it shoots pretty close. The expired one shoots pretty close to the real thing when you have the exposure compensation set for it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm going to continue to use this camera for that. Anyway, thanks for sitting through probably almost 15-20 minutes of me rambling about cameras and such. There'll be more videos coming about this kind of stuff. I'm gonna do something about this Canon. This is like an awesome budget camera that not enough people know about. Yeah, there's more coming, but either way. Oh yeah, my APS camera. Look out for a video on that later on. I've got a Walgreens point and shoot 35mm film camera that's almost disposable, but not quite. You'll see what I mean. There's plenty of videos coming for this camera stuff, but that's that. I hope it was mildly interesting, and I hope 35mm film photography continues to make a comeback beyond what happened during COVID. You know, people were bored and started buying cameras and stuff like I did. So beyond that, I hope it continues to grow, because it's kind of a lost art, and while I might not be good at it, I do think that I'll get better. But as long as it's popular, supplies will still be produced, and it'll be a lot easier to do this kind of stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe, that'd be cool. I want to grow this channel. I know I do a lot of stuff. I might start splitting it into different channels, because it's automotive lighting, ceiling fans, and cameras all in one. It makes no sense. But yeah, thanks for watching, and just be on the lookout for more stuff.